Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it was sent to us by one of our listeners, and the message reads like this. Hello Brother Nashi, how are you? I am a pastor and I have my own confession. My brother, I do work in the fields, and as we are working in the fields, we preach about the love of God and letting people prepare for the second coming of Jesus Christ. We work in unentered areas, and when I say in unentered areas, these are areas where they have not yet received the gospel or ever heard about the love of God. I have been ministering in such areas, and in most cases these are in remote areas. So going to these places is hard work, because when we arrive, sometimes we are met with such resistance because they do not know us and have never heard about the word of God, and also because we seem to be disturbing those who will be working for the dark side. So we travel all over the place to spread the word of God. My first encounter was when we went to preach in a certain area. This area, my brother, it was infected by those people that delve in dark magic, because from the moment that we stepped into that village, I saw fire burning on this other mountain, my brother. I don't know how to quite explain this thing to you, but when that fire was burning, it was then lifted from that mountain. Then it started to fly across the sky. Then the car that I was traveling in, it just stopped working. After praying, that is when the car started to work again. It was very difficult for us to navigate, and I want to say that indeed we serve a living God. We arrived at the site where we pitched our tent. Then we started to preach. First day, nobody came. Then the service was over. Then we went to sleep. We were sleeping at this other nearby school. That school was acting as our host. We usually traveled as a team, and this was a group work. The second day, we decided to use a PA system so as to attract the people, because we found out that even though people were not coming to our tent, but if we were going to use our PA system, then the word could even reach those people that were in their homes. We preached on and on this day. The PA system was so loud, and I remember that 3 people came out of their houses so that they can come and hear about the word of God, but they didn't want to step their feet into the tent. It seemed as if they were so afraid of something. They just stood at a distance as they were hearing the word of God. Then at the end, I saw that there was one amongst those women that were standing just watching us was crying. I called that woman into the tent, but she then turned, then she walked away. The following day, we went to witness about Jesus Christ, and we tried to have a door-to-door and tell them to come spend some time with us at around 7 p.m. People would open their doors, and upon hearing our invite, they would close their doors on us and never respond. What a weird way of responding. And I kept on wondering why these people were so cold-hearted, but I felt so sorry for them, because most of them, even though we would enter into homes where you could see that there were people that were sick in those homes, but they seemed to be afraid even to ask for help. Next household, the person that opened the door told us that in the area that we were in an area that they didn't want anyone to worship the Lord, because in this area that we were in, they had their own God that created them. This was really shocking. So we left, we went back to the tent, and we prayed so much. And that night, about 4 people had the nerve to enter into that tent. But my brother, whilst I was preaching, that is when I had a spiritual attack. I don't know what happened exactly, but the next thing that happened is that I woke up and I was wet all over. Then the people that I was with, they were busy praying for me. They said that there was a wind that just came rushing into the tent whilst I was praying. Then it seemed as if the wind had knocked me to the ground and I had collapsed for more than 30 minutes. And I could not speak, I could not do anything. My jaws were tightly closed as if they were glued together. A wind had caused confusion, but they kept on praying until the wind had finally left the tent. This wind that had entered into that tent, the people that were praying for me said that the way that this wind had entered into the tent, it was as if someone was remotely controlling it, because it had missed all the chairs and the equipment, but it had came straight for me. After attacking me, when those people that I was with kept on praying, that wind left me as if it was remotely controlled by another person. It was too strong. After I had regained my consciousness, then we prayed for a little bit, then we went back to our sleeping quarters. The next day, we went back to the tent, and on this day, there were people who came. We were still using the PA system to get the word out. Each and every night, that wind will come and it will circle the tent, then it will go away. Then on this other day, that wind, when it came, it didn't circle the tent as it used to do. What it did on that day is that it came, then it just took the tent away. We looked helplessly as our tent flew very high and it went with the wind. This was not a small tent. It was one of those big white tents. It was taken away and we never saw it again. The owners of this place were resisting us, and it was clear that they didn't want us in this place. That night, we went back to the school and we were allocated this other room. We all slept together in one room because it was during the rainy season. So these other sleeping quarters that we had been allocated to us, there was a lot of water that was getting into that classroom. So on that night, we had no choice but to sleep in one room. As we were sleeping, we woke up to another woman who was an evangelist. She was screaming, but the way that she was screaming, she could not tell us what was happening to her. She only told us after the episode was over. She said that there was a voice that told her to pray, but she was too tired that she ignored the voice. Once that voice had stopped talking to her, she then saw three men. These three men that entered into that classroom that we were sleeping in then started to fight with her. They fought with her. Then those men tried to abuse her. The only thing that she could do was scream, but she could not tell us what was happening to her at the time when she was receiving that spiritual attack. My brother, even though I said I was a prayer warrior, but for a moment I was really scared to look at that woman as she was screaming. But the way that she was screaming, words were not exactly coming out of her mouth. We don't know where this scream was coming from, but we could just hear that this woman was screaming even though her mouth was shut, because her mouth was closed shut. This was quite a scary thing, but we continued praying and praying. Then the lights just went off, and at that time we had our little solar panel. Since it was in the rainy season, the battery had not yet fully charged, so we only had about 30 minutes of battery life. We switched on the lights since we were under spiritual attack. Then the battery died, so we were left in the dark. As we were sitting there in the dark, then we heard that there were people that were trying to break the door. They had tried to attack us spiritually, and they had seen that they had failed. Now they came physically, my brother. They came to physically attack us. My brother, we stayed in that classroom being afraid for the rest of the night. When the morning came, and as we were busy looking around the classroom, we then saw that there was a knife that had been dropped. It seemed as if this knife had been used to stab me, but I want to thank God that the person that had stabbed me, the wound was not really deep. And the other thing that confused us was that all over the classroom we saw fur of a hyena and some sharp teeth that we randomly picked on the classroom floor. This was a physical and a spiritual battle. This was a spiritual battle that had become physical. We had to pray more and ask the Lord to come and fight for us. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to us by our dear listener right there. Yo, strange things do happen. Let me ask one of our admins if this was the complete message or not.